Hello, and thank you for joining us on today. Over the last several weeks, we've been hearing the importance of practicing social distancing as well as cleansing or washing our hands. There's a scripture that's been circulating through social media. I saw it on Instagram, where people are posting from James chapter 4, verse 8, where it talks about washing your hands or cleansing your hands. But if you think that God is talking about these hands, then it's very important that you watch this to the end of the video. So the passage of scripture we're going to look at today comes from James chapter 4, verse 8, where the scripture says, "Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded." Before we can deal with the portion of scripture that says to wash your hands or cleanse your hands, let's deal with the first part where it says to draw close to God, and he will draw close to you. Now, man is made up of a physical body, we have a soul, and we have a spirit. So man is spirit, soul, and body. Physically, if I want to be close to a person, I can do this through proximity. I can go and sit beside a person. Physically, I'm now closer to them. But emotionally, the soul side of it does not mean that we're close. You can be emotionally distant from a person, even though they are physically beside you. But God is spirit. So how do we draw close to spirit? How is that done with our spirit man? I could come to church on a consistent basis every week, and that's the physical coming to draw close to God. But physically being here doesn't mean that you're close to God. You can have an emotional response. Lifting my hands, I could cry. And this emotional response doesn't necessarily mean that you're drawing close to God. There's a spirit part that is critical in this process. So how do we, through our spirit man, draw close to God, who is spirit? So there's a story in the scripture where Jesus was speaking to the woman at the well, and there is a series of truths that he explained to her that is very important for us to understand how this works. So in John chapter 4, verse 23, Jesus explained to the woman that the hour comes, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. So worshiping God has to be done in spirit. He went on to say at verse 24, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The requirement for true worship requires it to be done with our spirit, not just our physical, not just our emotional side, our soul, but with our spirit as well. So let's understand this truth, that God is spirit, not is a spirit. He is spirit. God is the creator. He created the spirit realm, and he created this natural realm. The scripture says that he is the father of spirits, which means that spirits originated from him. He's the originator of not only spirit beings and that spiritual realm or dimension or places. He is the creator of this natural realm as well. So God does not dwell in the spirit realm, but the spirit realm dwells in God. Everything dwells and consists and is kept in place by him. The heavens is too small for God to dwell in the heavens. And so the scripture says that the earth is his footstool, the heavens is his throne. And so these scriptures help us to understand that God is more vast than this natural realm. He's more vast than the spirit realm together. But both of these realms, both of these worlds exist within him. When you look at the passage of scripture in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it states that in the beginning, God created the heavens, which is spirit realm, and the earth, which is the natural realm. So spirit comes first, then the natural, which is the same when it comes to worship. That it's not about our physical man, it's not about our emotional side, but it begins with our spirit. Our spirit then affects our emotional side as well as our physical side. And so we're required to worship him in spirit with our spirit man first. Look at this passage of scripture in Psalms where David made this statement. He said, I will bless the Lord, O my soul, and soul is your emotional side. But he says not just the emotions, he said, and with all that is within me. That's my spirit man. So the two parts going together, my emotional, but more importantly, my spirit man. The two of them working together is what God is so much more interested in than just a emotional relationship with us. So how do I draw close to God, who is spirit, and how do I connect with him with my spirit? Because it has to be a spirit to spirit connection. Well, David was very instrumental in helping us understand how this works. He made a statement in Psalms chapter 51, verse 15 and 17. And in this passage of scripture, he talks about having a contrite heart. In verse 15, he says, O Lord, open thou my lips, and my mouth shall show forth thy praise. He's talking about our physical man. Verse 16, for thou desirest not sacrifice, else I would give it. Thou delightest not in burnt offerings. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart. O God, thou wilt not despise. So how do you draw close to God with our spirit man is done with the heart. The heart talks about our spirit man. And as I draw close to God with my heart, not the emotion, not my emotional side, this is what begins to connect with God. It has to be done with the heart. I pray from the heart. I worship from the heart. And so that's that scripture where Jesus talked about how the lips, they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. God is interested in the heart. And so David understood this truth that I can slay animals, we can kill animals, bring the blood, sacrifices, but God was never interested in that. What he wants is man's heart. Those sacrifices represented the heart. And that was always the case from the beginning. So God is interested in a contrite heart. That word contrite means to be broken, a broken spirit, one that comes to God in a repentant state, one recognizing their need for him in a place of humility, realizing that they're wise only in their own eyes, but through humility, realizing that I'm not wise at all, that I need God, and there's a drawing and a desire for him. And so this broken, contrite spirit that comes to God, that's what God is interested in. That's what God desires. And this is how we draw close to God with our spirit man. So now let's go back to our scripture, James chapter 4, verse 8. It says, draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh to you. So we understand now that this is done through the spirit man, which helps us to understand that the washing and cleansing of our hands is not done physically. It's not a physical washing with soap and water. This is a spiritual encounter. This whole scripture is dealing with our spirit man. And so how does our spirit hands, our spiritual hands become dirty? It's with the things that we occupy ourselves with, things that we handle, things that we entertain. And so what things are you entertaining with your heart? It may not be the physical, I'm engaged in this and I'm dealing with this. So people will say, well, I've never cheated on my spouse because they've never physically gone through the act. But Jesus said, if you've thought about it, entertained it in your heart, you've lusted after a person, then you have already committed adultery. And so it's not dealing with the physical act of anything, it's dealing with the heart. These are heart issues. So now how do we cleanse our spiritual hands? So Jesus really drove this point home in Matthew chapter 15, when the disciples were being criticized for eating without washing their hands. They were told that this was dirty and that they needed to be cleansed. And Jesus began that passage of scripture by saying, how come you don't understand this yet? He said in Matthew 15, verse 17, do not ye yet understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goeth into the belly and is cast out into the drought, meaning it'll pass through your body into basically the toilet. Verse 18, but those things which proceed out of the mouth comes from the heart, and they defile the man. So what comes out of the heart is what causes filth and the need for men to be cleansed. Verse 19, for out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulterers, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands defileth not a man. Jesus just provided a list of things that are a part of the heart, issues and thoughts. Now, this is very interesting. He's not saying that these individuals are engaged in these activities. These are thoughts, and that's critical. So if you look at verse 19, it says, for out of the heart proceeds thoughts, evil thoughts. They come from the heart. Thoughts of murder, thoughts of adultery, thoughts of fornication. So we're going to deal with this passage of scripture on part 2. And if you think that adultery is cheating on a spouse, then make sure you tune in because we got a lot to cover. I want to thank you for joining us on today. If you like what we're doing, make sure you subscribe to our channel. That way you'll be notified when we post new videos. Also like and please share with those that you think this message will really touch them. Don't tune off just yet. I have a very special announcement that I want to share with you that will close the rest of this video. And until next time, I pray that God will open unto you his good treasure. Be blessed. The crazy thing about life is that death is a normal part of it. And no matter how much death we see or experience, it's crazy that nothing really ever prepares you for it. The good thing is that for those of us that are in the faith, we have a promise that we can hold on to. That if we continue in the faith and finish our race, then we'll see all of you again. We'll see you when we get there.
He had a reverence for the law since his adolescence. Since his father was a reverend, that was his connection. Dad moved with such faith, people resurrected. When he spoke, demons fled.